Welcome to the JCPS MTSS training on the Classroom Systems Toolkit with a focus on the application Good Behavior Game. I am Sarah Adams, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher with Elementary Zone 1.
I am Bo Burkett, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher with the High School Zone. Please take a moment to write down or type the case-sensitive bit.ly into your web browser. This will allow you to access the slide deck and all of the links for future reference. These are the components of MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. As you can see, MTSS provides multiple levels of support for all learners and aligns resources and support with our district's 6 systems for students and for teachers who deliver and support instruction. MTSS addresses academic, social, emotional, and behavioral development. It focuses on overall school improvement that is sustainable. JCPS has 3 departments within MTSS, as shown on this concept map. MTSS Academics, directed by Donna Lawson, supports schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic supports with a focus on Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and support. MTSS Behavior Department, directed by Sandra Hensel, supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks, including positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS, and the Behavior Support Systems model, which is in alignment of PBIS and restorative practice. Our department is MTSS Engagement, directed by Dr. Naomi Brahim. The goal of the MTSS Engagement Department is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. 6 MTSS toolkits were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instructional practices to increase student engagement, reduce student behaviors, and decrease disproportionality. Here are the 6 MTSS toolkits. By clicking on the toolkit image, you will access the MTSS department webpage and each toolkit. To ground our thinking for classroom systems that support behavior, we will utilize this definition. Teachers use academic and behavioral data to prescribe short and long-term supports for students to meet and exceed standards and strengthen their sense of belonging. This toolkit is broken down into 3 high-yield practices defined by John Hattie as practices teachers can use to move learning forward. All 3 are needed to apply the application Good Behavior Game. It is important that you familiarize yourself with each of these practices prior to using this application. The first high-yield practice is student-teacher relationships. Any educator is said to have a good student-teacher relationship when the degree of interactions between themselves and the student end positively. This is easily seen in classrooms with positive environments and few problem behaviors. Remember, the bulk of the work is on how the teacher cultivates and maintains the positive relationship. The next high-yield practice is classroom management. In this practice, teachers set rules and expectations, sometimes with the aid of students, and then use positive strategies to have students adhere with the rules. These rules should be reasonable, based on grade level, and the outcomes of the teacher and student interactions should be positive. Having good classroom management is a major indicator of student success. The third high-yield practice involves teacher expectations of performance. Teachers who believe that their students can succeed have a great impact not only on academic success, but behavioral success as well. In order to have high expectations, teachers should voice these independently of school-wide expectations, emphasize growth and progress in their expectations, regularly communicate these expectations, give students reasonable challenges, encourage the student that they can be successful, and give regular feedback on student progress. Teacher expectations can be applied to the whole class or, if necessary, to individual students after being modified for their needs. For the specific application of the good behavior game, it is defined as a strategy that is set up by the teacher to create a competition for good behavior points among student teams. Before we dive into more specifics of the good behavior game, let's talk about tiered or layered supports. Notice the graphic on the slide showing the various levels of support, starting with Tier 1 for all students being the foundation, Tier 2 supports layered on top and provided in addition to Tier 1 for a small percentage of students, with Tier 3 layered on both of these and provided for an even smaller percentage of students. Our focus for today's training, good behavior game, can be used as a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 support. Teachers know when they are successful and when they utilize the good behavior game in a competitive setting to help motivate and reward students individually or in groups to complete a task or targeted behavior. For this presentation, we will identify common misbehaviors that interrupt instruction and classroom climate. You will be able to determine how the good behavior game can decrease these behaviors and create a plan for implementation. Before we get started, take a moment to pause and reflect. What are the most common misbehaviors that you battle during the school day? When thinking of these behaviors, where do they occur? Is there a certain time of day when they occur? The good behavior game is manageable and can be used in a variety of settings to help motivate and reward students individually or in groups for task completion. It can be a competition between other students, the teacher, or the student themselves. Let's watch a short video that explains the good behavior game and how it can be used in the classroom. As you watch, think back to the behaviors you mentioned in your reflection. Could this application help minimize those behaviors?
The good behavior game. What is it? The good behavior game, or GBG, introduced in this module as Achieving Success Together, is a behavior management strategy that is implemented to reduce and prevent disruptive and off-task behaviors. And it's especially useful for students with EBD. Students work together in teams to follow classroom rules and qualify for an incentive like stickers, extra computer time, free homework pass. You and other school staff using the GBG will let students know the behavioral expectations for that day, which can be the classroom or school rules that are already in place. Next, you will let students know that they will have to work together as a team to achieve their behavioral goal for the day and for the whole team to win. For example, if they earn fewer than 5 check marks on the board for disruptive behaviors, they've won the game. Another example is that students strive to earn at least 5 check marks for being on task and following class rules.
Today you'll get grades for following the rules, okay? So what I'll do is I'll use a little sheet of paper and I will check mark every time I see you following a rule for today, okay? Which means, for example, all the IDs are visible, you get a check mark. Or everybody was here on time, so you already got a check mark for that. And it'll be random, so it won't be like you'll be seeing me, oh, I know she's coming up, and so let's behave. No, you've got to behave all 45 minutes today, okay? Because you won't know when I'm checking you. But the fact that it's together means, for example, Alejandra, it's only because I know her name. See, for example, she had her cell phone out here, and so, what's your name? Camille, you can say it. Otherwise, so that you can get, the check mark. Otherwise, you would have lost it, and you would have got a cross mark, okay?
If together you all are going along with following your social contract expectations, if you are, I'm going to just write down a little check. If you're not, I'm going to write down a little X. And I trust that you'll have more checks than X's at the end. So I won't tell you when I'll do these random checks, but I tell you what, if you see any of your peers who are not following along with these social contract expectations, you can remind them and say, hey, stop, you're supposed to be being respectful. You're supposed to be a good avid student. So, get back on task because we want more checks than X's. And if you have more checks than X's at the end of class, guess what? You get a prize. What's the prize? You won't know till the end of class. So again, you want to encourage each other, achieving success together. You're working together to do a good job and following those social contract rules. With this if you win, I win system, students are quick to keep each other accountable for earning as few or as many check marks as possible.
Achieving success together. Perfect. Which one of those words do you think it means socially responsible? Together. Perfect.
The GBG is flexible and can be used for an entire class period or during a group activity.
How could I improve in class? All right, go ahead and sit down. We have
As you may have noticed in the video, the Good Behavior Game, GBG, is a preventative behavior management strategy that can be implemented to reduce disruptive and/or off-task behavior. It can be used during an entire class period or for an individual activity. It is especially useful for EBD students. As with any strategy, behavioral expectations should be explained to students and can be aligned to classroom or school rules that are already in place. It is important that teachers let students know they will have to work together as a team to achieve the behavioral goal for the day. There are some key steps for an effective implementation of the Good Behavior Game. Consider a time or activity during the day when this strategy would be necessary and effective. Group activities such as full class instruction are good target times. Consider times when there are specific misbehaviors for which there are clear alternative behaviors that can be taught and reinforced. Teach the strategy to all students. Define target behaviors, focusing on what students should do. Define points and how they will be delivered. Lastly, consider whether to use event or interval-based criteria for reinforcement. How might this look in the classroom? Here's an example of the Good Behavior Game used in a history class. Mr. Flint has taught his sophomore history class to raise their hands to get his attention, and he has implemented a teen versus teen version of the Good Behavior Game. He described the game to the entire class and divided them into equal teams, notifying all that the winning team would get a homework pass to be used in the next week. Each time that a student raises a hand during class, he acknowledges the student and tallies a point in the class square on the board. Conversely, when a student calls out, he provides a basic correction and then tallies a point in the other team square on the board. He continues this throughout the period and then counts the points in each square to determine the winner. Over time, he begins to increase the length of the game, moving it to 2 days, 1 week, and eventually 1 month intervals. By the last quarter, he was able to completely fade the game out. Notice how he eventually faded the strategy out. As we conclude, take a moment to reflect and plan. When will you try to use the Good Behavior Game? What behavior do you want to address? What goals can be set? We have also provided a form linked on this slide that could be used in your implementation and planning of the Good Behavior Game. When using the Good Behavior Game, there are a few important points to remember. Some of these were mentioned when discussing key steps in implementing the strategy. One being determining specific periods of time where the strategy would be most effective, and targeted behaviors must be clearly taught and contingencies for the awarding of points must be explained. Will the points be awarded on an event-by-event or interval basis? Students should be provided with prompts and reminders to facilitate student success. Allow both teams to access the reinforcer in the event of a tie. Also be sure to revise teams on a regular basis to maintain different teams and equalize as necessary. To create a classroom environment that is culturally responsive, teachers must first be aware of the cultural norms of the students. Based on these norms, some behavior interventions are more appropriate than others. Whatever intervention is chosen, the goal is to create a community of learners that feel appreciated for who they are. In classrooms where ECE students are present, teacher collaboration and data collection are key. Be certain to collect data on the specific behavior to track this behavior. Collaborate with the student's teacher of record to help implement appropriate interventions. Follow up with the teacher of record if the interventions are working or are not working. Creating a collaborative learning environment requires teachers to have solid classroom management skills. When engaging your students in authentic projects, be certain that you have the appropriate class-wide and individual behavior supports in place. These supports will increase engagement in students and increase the likelihood of a successful project. In reflecting on your own practice, consider the following as possible next steps for dealing with classroom misbehaviors. Use points as data to determine the effect of the intervention. Count your own reminders, increase to positive affect team success, and decrease as a manner of fading. Be sure to reference the Classroom Systems Toolkit for more information. On this slide, you will find supports from the MTSS Plan and JCPS Behavior Intervention Grid with a link. This grid gives potential interventions for commonly seen classroom misbehaviors. We have provided you with some additional resources that may be beneficial when implementing the good behavior game in your classroom. Thank you for joining us to learn more about the good behavior game. For more information on this application and many others, please visit the MTSS website.